Welcome back to part 2 of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Plinkett. If you haven't seen the previous videos, it is suggested you go back for context before starting this one. We're glad you're here, so let's continue. To start us off, Palpatine arrives home and we immediately get the vibe that the Jedi have some issues with Palps and the power that he possesses. Now we come to the biggest handicap of Revenge of the Sith. We have about 1 hour and 45 minutes of screen time to establish the Empire, get Anakin into the Darth Vader outfit, separate Luke and Leia, kill all the Jedi, and conclude the Clone Wars. The clock is ticking on these story threads, and with this reality looming, the film needs to hurry up. There is a lot of exposition dumps in the film, and yet there isn't enough information from these exposition dumps most of the time to definitively conclude why things are the way they are or make them totally convincing. The most glaring one is Anakin's turn, but we will get into that one later. For now, we need to understand why there is an issue with Palps and the Jedi, and all we have to go by is this.
Hundreds of senators are now under the influence of a Sith Lord called Darth Sidious.
Nevertheless, I feel we should keep a closer eye on the Senate.
Later, we get this information.
Anakin, our allegiance is to the Senate, not to its leader, who has managed to stay in office long after his term has expired.
The Senate demanded that he stay longer.
For a casual viewer, this information should be enough. Yet when you dig deeper, there is more going on here than just these elements. So like I did in my Attack of the Clones video, let's dive into the full details of what is going on completely at this point in the movie so you are fully in the know. Now remember, the only material I consider for this information is the movie, deleted scenes, the official film novel, and the Making of the Revenge of the Sith book. Nothing else. I want to look at the film itself, not all the countless material that add to it later. This includes the Clone Wars cartoon, which is itself very problematic towards the canon of the films at best. Since Attack of the Clones, the war has grown, and with it Palps' power. The Jedi began secretly investigating the Senate for the Sith that Dooku mentioned, and they conclude that the Sith is connected to Palpatine's office in some way. Meanwhile, Palpatine is gaining more and more powers, and he's viewed by the public as a hero because things are getting done. Anakin is also seen as a hero throughout the Republic, and he is touted as one of the reigning heroes of the war. Think like Patton or Rommel in World War II. Just before Grievous captured Palpatine, 2 new laws are coalescing in the capital. One has governors installed in regions of space, which would be mentioned in A New Hope.
The regional governors now have direct control over their territories. Fear will keep the local systems in line.
These governors have their own clone detachment at their command and oversee systems whether they want interference or not. Another decree that is about to be passed will place the Jedi under the direct control of the Chancellor. This really disturbs the Jedi Council. The Senate goes along with all this because many profit from the war. Others are just power-hungry politicians scrambling for a seat at the table, and more are too timid to really do something about anything. From within the Senate, a courageous group are starting to band together to stand up to Palpatine, and among them is Mon Mothma and Bail Organa. They want peace negotiations to begin. They also want Palpatine to release his emergency powers. And they plan to gather a group of like-minded senators to officially create a record requesting this. The group calls themselves the Delegation of 2000, in reference to the number of senators backing the movement. They are putting feelers out for powerful voices to help them, and Padme is one of them.
Everybody got that? Good!
Finally, there is Anakin. He has grown up on Coruscant with one stable confidant being Palpatine. When Anakin married Padme, she was included. By the start of this film, Obi-Wan and Anakin have a better relationship because Obi-Wan accepts Anakin for who he is and is wiser in dealing with him. Obi-Wan is the only connection Anakin has to the Jedi because they not only do not match his views, but they never accepted him in the first place. Anakin does not fit in the Jedi Order. While he values his relationships and attachments, the Jedi offer selflessness and contemplation. All of this is covered in deleted scenes, the film novel, and the movie itself. So, knowing this information, when we get to the scene with Padme revealing she is pregnant, it is no surprise Anakin says this.
I'm tired of all this deception. I don't care if they know we're married.
Anakin, don't say things like that.
The novel goes even further when Anakin suggests simply leaving. Padme insists that Anakin is important to the Republic, and so is she, and now is not the time for them to do it. Despite some clunky dialogue, a main complaint of mine is that Padme is really sidelined in this film, since there really is no time for her or her deleted scenes. Essentially, she's relegated to worrying or crying for the rest of the film before she reaches necessary plot points concluding her pregnancy and death. It really sucks compared to her previous appearances. Thus, I believe it is vital that all deleted scenes with her should have stayed in the movie, not only for her character's continuity, but to help with Anakin's turning for general audiences. You will see this when we get to those deleted scenes later. Now, a tough part of the movie is understanding what General Grievous and Separatist leadership know about Darth Sidious. By now, the leadership of the Separatists must have spent fortunes leading this war, and they lost way more than they ever would have staying with the Republic. You can say they are trapped in their situation now, and it's about survival. It's hard to even think of Nute Gunray as anything but a buffoon, because ever since Episode 1, he has been manipulated, defeated, and used by Sidious. And yet, at the end of Revenge of the Sith, he naively states,
Lord Sidious promised us peace.
Nute Gunray is the stupidest asshole ever. This fucking idiot has been around for 3 films and is the dumbest person in the galaxy. However, in the 3rd film, Nute Gunray is still going along for the ride with all these jokers. Even though no one has yet to kill Padme, and he seems to be getting nothing out of this arrangement other than the destruction of all his Trade Federation ships and robots. Hey Nute, you're being had. It's time to stop making decisions, buddy, okay?
I know exactly what you mean.
For our first deleted scene in this video, Yoda, Mace, and Obi-Wan are in Yoda's apartment discussing Chancellor Palpatine making his move to take over the Jedi Council. Mace brings up for the first time that the Jedi should remove him from office. The only notable thing in this scene is mentioning of Palpatine's takeover of the Jedi legally. The rest of the dialogue appears in other recut scenes in the film. As a result, this scene really doesn't help much. Yoda's advice to Anakin is not wrong here, because when one fears loss too much, it can overwhelm a person and their identity, which is what happens to Anakin. However, Yoda is so detached from loss that he is absolutely no help to Anakin. Because the Jedi cannot help him, there is only one person he can turn to for guidance or understanding, and that is Palpatine. After leaving Yoda, Anakin arrives late with a meeting with Obi-Wan. Anakin has been summoned by the Chancellor, and Obi-Wan rightfully warns Anakin to be careful of Palpatine, which leads into this next extended scene.
Anakin, this afternoon, the Senate is going to call on me to take direct control of the Jedi Council. The Senate is too unfocused to conduct a war. This will bring a quick end to things.
I agree. But the Council may not see it that way.
There are times when we must all endure adjustments to the Constitution in the name of security.
With all due respect, sir, the Council is in no mood for more constitutional amendments.
Thank you, my friend. But in this case, I have no choice. This war must be won.
Everyone will agree on that.
Anakin, I've known you since you were a small boy. I've advised you over the years, when I could. You fought many battles the Jedi Council thought were lost. And you saved my life.
Now this scene is a tragic cut because it shows the dynamic of Anakin and Palp's relationship. The Jedi have been really hard on Anakin during his life, and Palpatine basically fuels his ego and embellishes him. It is night and day, and if you watched Attack of the Clones and this film, it should be obvious to you. If not, watch my past videos where I show receipts for this claim. If anyone is like a true father figure to Anakin, it's Palpatine. Though Anakin says Obi-Wan is like a father in Attack of the Clones, Kenobi is more brotherly than fatherly. This scene would then blend in with Palpatine appointing Anakin to the Council, and it is a brilliant manipulation. No matter what happens with the appointment, Palps wins. If there is any resistance to this assignment from the Jedi, it could be construed by Anakin as further rejection. And if not, Palps will be the person who got him there, not the Jedi. Now the Jedi are not fools because they clearly see Anakin as a pawn of Palpatine, especially after this stunt. Thus, the Jedi response to the appointment is right, even though it seems harsh.
You are on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of master.
What? This is outrageous. It's unfair.
Anakin's outburst proves he lacks the discipline or self-awareness to be on the council. He thinks his raw talent and power to use the Force is a measure of his skills, and he believes the Jedi don't acknowledge it. This is simply not the case, as the Jedi believe discipline is needed for such power in order to attain master rank in the Order. The novel offers some interesting insights here. Since the Jedi are trying to close in on the Sith in Palp's office, they see Anakin's appointment as an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. First, Anakin can spy on Palpatine, and if he finds nothing, Mace Windu directly assumes that Skywalker's betrayal will help him separate from Palpatine because the Jedi feel Anakin is just too close to him. Obi-Wan actually tried to dissuade the Council from asking Anakin to spy on Palps, as he said Anakin will never forgive them for putting him in that situation. Despite Obi-Wan's objection, he must deliver the assignment unhappily.
You're asking me to do something against the Jedi Code, against the Republic, against a mentor and a friend. That's what's out of place here. Why are you asking this of me?
The Council is asking you.
Anakin is right to be offended as well. However, he cannot see the big picture of what is going on. Because of Palpatine's grooming, Anakin's discernment is becoming narrower. Things will get worse when the next batch of deleted scenes play out. The scene takes place in Bail Organa's office where senators, including Mon Mothma, future leader of the rebellion, are beginning to organize against Palpatine because he is turning into a dictator. Because of the sensitivity of the information they have, they agree to this.
And so we will not discuss this with anyone, without everyone in this group agreeing.
That means those closest to you, even family.
This is difficult for Padme because Anakin can sense when things are being withheld from him. This becomes a major selling point of Anakin's growing paranoia towards Obi-Wan and Amidala later in the film, which you will see as we go on. The next scene shows a crack forming between Anakin and Padme as a direct result from the last two scenes they were in. Anakin is being asked to betray Palpatine while Padme is actively planning to stand up to Palpatine. It shows the dynamic of their opposing views, and unfortunately in the theatrical version, without the deleted scene, the relevance of this sequence is lessened. Amidala shows outright doubt in the Republic, while Anakin is protective of Palpatine by accusing her of sounding like a Separatist. It mirrors how real-life people allow politics to limit their openness with each other, and in these characters' situation, it will grow into mistrust from Anakin. The prophecy of the Chosen One has been debated to be nonsensical by some, but here is what Lucas has to say.
The prophecy is that Anakin will bring balance to the Force and destroy the Sith. He becomes Darth Vader. Darth Vader does become the hero. Darth Vader does destroy the Sith, meaning himself and the Emperor. He does it because he is redeemed by his son.
In a nutshell, the dark side is corruption that taints the Force. In Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, the Jedi can't see much because the dark side is causing ripples around them. It also doesn't help that the Jedi suffer from hubris and political machinations as well. To bring balance to the Force, the taint must be removed from the galaxy, and that is the Sith. Now, somewhere in here, there is a concept for Han Solo helping Yoda on Kashyyyk. We don't know exactly where the scene would have fell in, but it had a young Han Solo looking for some kind of communicator to pinpoint and track where General Grievous is receiving the signal. There's only one little quote here, and I'm really glad they did not put this in. We did not need to see a young Han Solo helping Yoda. One of the most loved sequences in Revenge of the Sith by many is the opera scene. The performance you are seeing is a Mon Calamari troupe swimming. The visual has a more metaphorical meaning when you realize the imagery is something akin to sperm swimming in an egg. Thus, it is analogous to the dark side germinating in Anakin at this moment. There are many things to note when Anakin arrives to the show. Lieutenant Danel Fatoni from Attack of the Clones is still up to no good disguised as a security officer and fits right in with the corrupt, rich atmosphere. If you look closely, by the door you can see Rice Stahl, who is one of Jabba's singers in the special edition of Return of the Jedi as one of the attendees. You can also see George Lucas hanging out with his daughters just by the door of the ceremony. The opera scene is really full of needed information and is quite seductive from a dark side point of view. It shows how powerful Ian McDiarmid is as a performer, yet most critics would have you believe that Anakin is just stupid in this scene.
I'm willing to bet money that if Palpatine had said,
"You know, Anakin, the Sith Lords have the ability to save pregnant women from dying during childbirth."
I bet even if he said those exact words, Anakin still would have just sat there looking like a retarded Neanderthal. Oh, can I still say Neanderthal?
Good as a point of view, Anakin. The Sith and the Jedi are similar in almost every way.
Hey, idiot. Maybe this guy that seems to despise the Jedi and keeps talking about the advantages of being a Sith Lord might be a Sith Lord.
What is going completely over Plinkett's head is that Anakin is on the verge of despising the Jedi himself. Had Plinkett paid attention to all the prequels, he would have noticed that all of this has been boiling within Anakin until the moment the Jedi asked him to betray someone. So at this moment, Anakin is in line with Palpatine's view of the Jedi, even though he is trying to convince himself he is not. What is even more amazing is that Plinkett does not even regard the subtext going on here. Lucas is trying to show you something profound about real life here. Palps is accusing the Jedi of wanting to destroy democracy, even though that is his eventual goal. The film is screaming at the audience to not fall for political trickery like Anakin did. Palpatine is fomenting division everywhere. This film is not just about a guy turning bad and going into a suit. The Phantom Menace tried to make the audience view the prequels in galactic terms because it's also about the fall of democracy. Anakin is just a vehicle driving towards the bigger picture, and yet this is constantly overlooked.
Basically, the point of all three films is just to get Anakin into the Darth Vader suit and to neatly tie everything together at the end and to make a shit zillion dollars.
Where do they teach you to talk like this? In some Panama City sailor want a hump bar? Or is this getaway day and your last shot at his whiskey? Sell crazy someplace else. We're all stocked up here.
Here's an interesting thing about democracy is if you don't treat it well, if you don't do your job, especially if you're a representative in the Senate or the Parliament or whatever, the whole thing can go awry, because if you're always bickering and not agreeing on things and doing the people's work who elected you, a tyrant will come in and take over and do it for you because the people want to get the job done.
Then Plinkett shows more ignorance when he argues this.
Number 5, a war with no consequences. But basically the effects of this war are not felt at all on Coruscant, the main setting of the film. The whole war just seems like some kind of minor inconvenience happening somewhere out in space, even though it says otherwise in the opening title crawl. Padme combs her hair on the window, smiling. There's an active nightlife scene. Ships fly around like business as usual. Perhaps we actually witness a physical decay of Coruscant over the duration of the war. At first we see a ton of flying car traffic in the first film, and then as the war goes on, the traffic's down to basically nothing. Buildings are in decay, we see food lines, then Palpatine would make speeches about making the ultimate sacrifice for the Empire, and so on. If you were an average Joe, the rise and fall of the Empire might not have even affected your life in the least bit, it seems, making the sacrifice and risk of the rebellion utterly pointless. Nice job, everyone. No one cares.
Just like before, Plinkett completely misses the point. In 1977, the classic trilogy was based on the Vietnam War. Instead of making a rehash, Lucas based Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith on the political era after 9/11 in America.
Either you are with us, or you are with the terrorists.
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
The average citizen in America did experience a war without consequences between 2001 to 2011. During this period, we were even told by our president from O'Hare Airport in Chicago to get down to Disney World in Florida. Take your families and enjoy life the way we want it to be enjoyed. Do we really want to see another movie depicting a war-torn society? I could suggest many to check out. As for the prequels, Lucas was doing something original, and I embrace that. It is now time for Obi-Wan to be sent to Utapau, and although Anakin suggests what Palpatine wants, he is blocked, and rightfully so, as the Jedi should decide who they send. You can see the frustration of Anakin for a short bit before cutting away. The Battle of Kashyyyk is enjoyable, just like all the battles in Lucas Star Wars. The only thing that I would note is Luminara Unduli is the acting general of the battle, and she can be seen here. I also wanted to take a moment to point out some of the animatics not used in the film. They don't really add too much to the battle, but are at least interesting to glance at. Before departing, Obi-Wan visits Padme, and during this scene, Obi-Wan reveals that he knows about the relationship she has with Anakin to no surprise. Obi-Wan assures her he will never tell the Council, and that the reason for his visit is to reveal that Anakin is in a tough spot right now, and he wants her to be there for him. He also encourages her to help Anakin stay in the Jedi Order, because it guides him, and if he left, he couldn't come back. It shows that Obi-Wan truly cares for Anakin and goes out of his way to help him. Not having this in the movie and making it a deleted scene was a very poor judgment call. Continuing the deleted scenes with the senators has Padme hosting a meeting in her apartment. Padme mentions that they should tell the Jedi, and she knows one they can trust, which is Obi-Wan, not Anakin. The book confirms this. This is refused, as the group says,
There would be dangers. We don't know how the Jedi fit into all this.
The senators decide to go forward with the petition of 2000 and then address the Jedi question. After Anakin says goodbye to Obi-Wan and parting as friends, the next deleted scene occurs. Anakin is waiting for the Chancellor at his office while Mas Amedda and the royal guards disembark. This scene leads into a private meeting where Palpatine asks Anakin to sit in the meeting with senators because he wants Anakin to sense if anyone is being deceitful or evil. Then Palpatine says he's worried about the Jedi because Obi-Wan visited the apartment of one of the senators that was coming to the meeting to challenge him. Palpatine calls this group of senators a cabal trying to dethrone his power. Palpatine suggests the Jedi are stoking it somehow. He also reveals that Padme is the senator Obi-Wan visited, and in earlier scenes, according to the book, Amidala was keeping something from Anakin, and he sensed it. Obviously, what she is keeping from Anakin is the senators and their plans. This scene, like all the other Senate meetings, would have really helped us to understand Anakin's turn towards Padme and Obi-Wan because Palpatine is truly being malicious and using Anakin's ties against him and toying with his jealousies. Wanting to get to the truth, Anakin goes directly to Padme's apartment to investigate. This scene starts with Anakin trying to use the Force to sense people who were in the room. In his hand is a data pad of all the suspected senators involved with the delegation of 2000. The book also states that he does sense that Obi-Wan was there. When Padme enters, he questions her why he was there, and originally he questioned Padme more severely. However, the cut they used in the film was preferable as it makes sense and makes Anakin appear to be keeping it together even though he is seriously paranoid up to this point. Everyone is pulling Anakin in different directions, and he is starting to wonder who he can truly trust. He tries to relay this to Padme by saying this.
I feel lost.
Lost? What do you mean?
Obi-Wan and the Council don't trust me.
Despite Padme's attempt to comfort Anakin, it doesn't work. He thinks the Jedi are plotting to take over the Republic and using him and Padme to do it. The culmination of the Senate deleted scenes occurs when Palpatine is challenged by the senators, and Padme is speaking for them. Anakin stands by the Chancellor, and the meeting ends in a standoff.
On behalf of the delegation of 2000, I thank you, Chancellor.
I thank you for bringing this to my attention, Senator.
Notice the look on Padme's face. She can clearly see that Palpatine is patronizing her, and then she looks at Anakin as if he's standing on the wrong side of the table. He looks down in shame as she walks off. This is the Padme we should have seen in Revenge of the Sith. Palpatine continues to try to manipulate Anakin by stating,
Senator Amidala is hiding something. I can see it in her eyes.
This entire story thread was sacked, and the sad part is, scenes like these would possibly be called boring or labeled stupid politics from those who just want to get to the next action set piece. Now that you know this information, though, the movie should seem a heck of a lot deeper for you. And it does wonders for repeat viewings. Obi-Wan being bold and jumping down here can be construed as reckless or stupid. In the past, Obi-Wan has been reckless, so this is in line with what we've seen him do before. Whatever the reasons, Kenobi engages and an underwhelming fight with Grievous occurs. To be critical, I always thought it was odd that Grievous did not just tell the droids to open fire at once because not all of the droids would miss. Sure, many of the droids would be destroyed in the crossfire, but they would easily be replaced. It is then that Grievous runs for it, and this brings us to the many animatics that were unused for the chase of the film. To be honest, I don't think the animatics would have made anything better than what we got in the theatrical cut. When the chase starts off, Obi-Wan was actually running over clones himself. That's kind of cold. As the Boga runs after Grievous, you can see it climbing walls, and in some cases Obi-Wan is hanging upside down. For the start of the fight, it looks like a video game obstacle course where they dodge debris, and then they find themselves in the crossfire of clones and droids. The Boga gets shot in the tail during this sequence. Grievous manages to get behind Obi-Wan and takes shots at him unsuccessfully. Then Grievous shoots through a moving train, killing countless people in it, and the train does not derail or stop. Obi-Wan avoids the train by climbing on the walls, and then Grievous shoots his way out of the train. Grievous actually turns around and spits debris at Obi-Wan until he turns around, and then the chase continues. Grievous goes to a windmill, and Obi-Wan destroys it to get to Grievous. Obi-Wan is then dragged for the rest of the chase before using the trope of tying the cord he is dragged onto a stationary structure, thus crashing Grievous. The melee fight really would not have been believable because Grievous flips on top of Obi-Wan with great force and does not destroy his ribcage, and the cyborg punches Obi-Wan repeatedly in the face and does not crush his skull. Finally, Obi-Wan literally cuts away Grievous's arms with his saber before yanking Grievous's innards out, while Grievous watches helplessly. That's pretty gruesome. He then kicks the body over the edge of the platform. I vastly prefer the theatrical cut here, even though in that version Grievous is kicking and hitting Obi-Wan like a rag doll, and he must have an iron constitution because he has no bruises or wounds after the fight. It's an entertaining sequence, nevertheless. Back with the Jedi, Anakin is asked to tell Palpatine that Grievous is engaged. After he leaves, the remaining Jedi plot to overthrow Palpatine if he does not surrender his emergency powers in an attempt to save the Republic. What the Jedi is doing here is the right call, albeit a bit late.
Originally, this was written where Anakin was actually seduced in this scene, and he became the Sith pretty much in this scene. At the end, in this one, when faced with the reality, he stays a Jedi, and he says, I'll get to the bottom of this, and I'm going to turn you in. But originally, it wasn't like that. He kind of got more sucked into the idea of becoming a Sith Lord and saving his wife. And it just didn't play that well in terms of how fast he converted. So it seemed to make a lot more sense to have him stay loyal to the Jedi as long as possible.
When discussing the turn of Anakin Skywalker, many say that it is too quick in Revenge of the Sith, and I would argue that it's about time Anakin leaves the Order. For many videos, I have noted the poor treatment Anakin has received through the years by the Jedi and Obi-Wan, and it's amazing he lasted this long. The fact that Anakin is showing signs of struggle at coming to a decision in this scene shows he is still trying to do the right thing and remain loyal to both the Jedi and Palpatine. This is impossible, though, and he must choose sides, and he will do so soon. The real argument to be had is the severity of his turn to the dark side, and that will be covered in my next video. An important thing to also keep in mind is that Palpatine is a danger to Anakin at this point if the Jedi get a hold of him. If left alive, Palpatine knows Anakin murdered a village of sand people, he is married to Padme, he has killed Dooku in cold blood, and has intimate knowledge of Anakin's true feelings towards the Jedi. If the Jedi learned all this stuff, his place in the Order would certainly be jeopardized. So Anakin also has a vested interest in keeping Palpatine away from Jedi hands. Whether this is a deciding factor in Anakin's choice to stay loyal to Palpatine, I don't know, but it is something to ponder. In the end, Anakin makes the right choice to turn Palpatine in. However, Mace Windu, being the cold Jedi he is, says this.
If what you've told me is true, you will have gained my trust. But for now, remain here.
Anakin could very easily see this comment as a slap in the face. Imagine you have spent over 12 years with an organization, and since you arrived, you've been unwanted. After spending 3 years in a war, fighting countless battles, leading armies for the Jedi, and working with various responsibilities and logistics, one of the leading members would say something like this to you, even though you've proved yourself time and time again, really shows the lack of respect for your efforts. Anakin may not be perfect, but he has been reliable, trustworthy, and obedient when push comes to shove. Mace has pretty much been cold or hostile since day one towards him, and now he says this. It's not hard to imagine that this alone could have precipitated the final motivation for Anakin to say, "That's it, I can't stay with these Jedi anymore." This is not to discredit Mace's decision, though. He senses confusion within Anakin, and rightfully so. He thinks it's best interest for everyone if Anakin stays behind, and this is the right call, even though it was delivered poorly, like always. I will say that I always thought this insight from Plinkett always rang true and was quite funny.
We must move quickly if the Jedi Order is to survive.
Then they just start walking at what can't even be described as a brisk pace. Yawn.
As Anakin contemplates his situation and stares out the window with Padme, it allows us to reflect and ponder what is going on in Anakin's mind. I'm sure he's thinking the Jedi will kill Palpatine because he's a Sith. After all the years Anakin and Palpatine have invested in each other, I'm sure he couldn't let that happen. He might even love Palpatine like a father because Palpatine was never evil or abusive to Anakin until his methodical manipulations in this film, and he might not be fully cognitive of that fact. For our final deleted moments of this video, there was concept art of the Jedi entering Palpatine's office and being stopped by his secretary Darwok and the royal guards. Darwok is thrown against a wall by the Jedi, and then they dispatch the royal guards. It would have been nice to have such a scene because it could have successfully been used as evidence against the Jedi to uphold Palp's claims in the Senate that the Jedi were trying to do a coup d'etat. Well, we've come to the end of another video, and I would sing your attendance if I had good enough pipes to do so.
God damn, that boy can sing.
You must be crazy.
He good.
You must be crazy.
We will see you in part 3 in under a month, and if you like this, click like and subscribe. Help the channel. Thanks.